Members, the ayes are 63 and the noes are 58. Part 1 will stand part. The question now is that Part 2 stand part. I call Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and I rise now to debate Part 2 of the bill. And you just heard the Labour Party vote against Part 1. That is against our instincts to do so, but we just cannot back up that part without that amendment being put in place. And it's sad to see that there were a few parties who think it's all okay to use ACC levies for whatever purpose they see fit, but that's not the view of the Labour Party. We will be supporting Part 2 wholeheartedly, and that is because it actually exposes the way in which the New Zealand public were misled by the national government when it came into office and claimed that there was a funding crisis in the ACC. That's what it claimed just 7 years ago. And yet, in Part 2 of this bill, we are allowing flexibility for the residual levy to be taken off prematurely because things have gone so well. Mr Smith, Dr Smith, I should say. So it was Nick Smith that tried to convince the country otherwise. He tried to claim that there was a funding crisis when the government took over. But here's the truth, and this Part 2 exposes it. In 1999, what happened was that the government of the day decided to move from a pay-as-you-go model, that is, that it was actually paying for the levies. Mr Chair, this is about the residual levy and the history of how it was put in place.
Yep.
The residual levy.
Right. The member did see me indicating that she should come to Part 2 of the bill. There is nothing historical in this. We've had our second reading debate. This is a narrow technical area to do with residual levies. There are matters that can be debated, but this is about 2019 or some other date in the future, and we cannot rehearse the history of the last decade in ACC. Sue Moroney.
Well, thank you, Mr Chair. It's going to be a bit difficult for the public to follow what the residual levy was put in place for, therefore. But it was designed for a full funding model, and that is why the government of the day, that's why the National Party, when it came in, tried to claim that there was a funding crisis, because in fact it was going to take us, and we knew this, to 2019 in order to get to full funding, and that's the purpose of the residual levy. So the fact that this part says actually things have gone so well within ACC that it looks likely, and the Minister announced today, it looks very likely that the residual levy will come off early, that just goes to show how misleading that whole debacle was. And Nick Smith's agreeing now. He's agreeing now that he misled the New Zealand public about 7 years ago. So we agree that because that if there's no need to keep the residual levy in place, that there should be flexibility to cease the operation of that levy prior to 2019. The Minister's indicated that's going to be next year, and we look forward to seeing that. However, one of the consequences of this is that it's important for the public listening to this debate to understand that's not going to actually mean a reduction overall in the ACC levies that have been paid to keep all of our accounts in good health, the work account, the earners account, the motor vehicle levy account. What it does is it simply, readjusts what was a temporary situation that was created in 1999, that was based on the injuries and accidents that needed to be fully funded at that point in time, and brings it forward into the modern day. So the impact of that will be that some companies and businesses will pay higher ACC levies than what they're paying now, particularly if they are in an industry or a sector that has had a lot more injuries and accidents in recent years than prior to 1999. Those companies and those businesses will in fact get an increase in their ACC levy. The ones that will get a reduction are the ones that have improved their safety record since 1999. They are the ones that will get set to reap the benefits of that because the residual levy will be removed. And so my very strong hope for this is that as Part 2, if it is voted through, and I anticipate it will, that when we make that adjustment and we decide which companies, Mr. Chair?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Part